The woman who passed away and discovered the shocking truth about what the departed are doing now, a near-death experience. Welcome to today's video. In this video, we will explore a truly unique and mysterious story about a woman who passed away and went through a profound near-death experience. Not only did she witness miraculous events, but she also uncovered frightening truths about the lives of souls after leaving the earthly realm. This journey reveals the mysteries of the afterlife and the things we have yet to learn about the existence of souls. Join us as we uncover unexpected discoveries and meaningful life lessons. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more fascinating stories to come. On a chilly autumn afternoon, as cold winds blew through the quiet streets, Sarah Williams, a 35-year-old financial director, left the office after a long, stressful day at work. She had spent hours reviewing financial reports and making critical decisions that could shape the future of the company. Despite the weight of the responsibilities, Sarah was always meticulous, decisive, and a strong leader. Everyone at the company admired her, and she took pride in the solid career she had built. She drove her sleek black car down the city streets, where the streetlights reflected off the glass windows of towering buildings. Sarah's life seemed like a series of accomplishments and stability. She had a fantastic job, a beautiful house in a peaceful neighborhood, and a life of independence without any material lacking. Yet, despite the perfection of everything around her, deep in her heart, Sarah felt an emptiness, a silent void that couldn't be filled. Her life, although successful, seemed to be missing something important. And it was in that moment, as she drove through a busy intersection, that everything changed. As Sarah drove through the busy streets, the flashing lights reflecting off the car windows around her, a large truck suddenly lost control from the opposite side, speeding across her lane with terrifying velocity. She couldn't react in time, only hearing the loud honking of horns and the screeching sound of brakes. The truck barreled towards her, and Sarah could only feel a powerful impact that sent her car flying out of control. Before everything plunged into darkness, it felt like a violent shock that left her head spinning, her heart pounding, and no strength to react. All she could sense was her body being jolted violently, the car swaying like a storm, and then, an overwhelming emptiness engulfed her. The noise around her seemed to be sucked into some invisible void, and the world around her suddenly vanished into the night. When Sarah opened her eyes again, she didn't see the white walls of an emergency room or hear the beeping machines or footsteps of doctors and nurses. Instead, she found herself in a mysterious, hazy space. Everything around her seemed to dissolve into a mist, unclear, with only the darkness surrounding her. A cold, desolate atmosphere lingered, as if she were stranded in a place beyond the physical world. There was no light, no color, only an eerie stillness that made her feel as if she were suspended in an infinite void, where time seemed to have stopped. Sarah felt herself being gently pulled, as if an invisible force was guiding her. She couldn't understand what was happening, but she didn't feel any fear. Everything around her seemed to fade, as though she were passing through a thick fog. Suddenly, a warm sensation spread through her heart, as if someone was leading her to a place she had never known. As Sarah moved through these mystical realms, she sensed a calmness, as if all her worries and fatigue from the earthly world had been shed. The atmosphere around her was still and peaceful, making her forget everything, leaving only the feeling of drifting lightly. Then, a brilliant beam of light suddenly appeared before her, illuminating everything around. This light wasn't ordinary, but had a strange, warm glow, yet it wasn't blinding. In that light, a figure slowly materialized, a middle-aged woman with silvery white hair and eyes that shone brightly, as though holding the entire universe. She wore a long white robe, and her presence radiated a purity and tranquility that was truly extraordinary. Though she didn't speak, her gaze towards Sarah was filled with warmth and boundless love. The feeling Sarah received from her was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. It made her feel as though she were facing an incredibly sacred presence, like a compassionate mother embracing her with endless love. "Welcome here, Sarah," the woman said, her voice flowing like a warm wave, yet carrying an undeniable power, an authority that seemed to emanate from every word. Her tone made Sarah feel as though she were wrapped in a blanket of serenity, as though the entire universe was embracing her, yet also conveying a seriousness, as if she were speaking words of great importance that Sarah could not ignore. You no longer belong to that world, the woman continued, her gaze gentle yet filled with a force that made Sarah feel a profound transformation within her soul. Sarah, still dazed and feeling as if she had stepped into an entirely different space, stammered. With clear doubt in her voice, I left this world? What's happening? I don't understand. I still feel life within me. She raised her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, but everything around her felt nothing like the world she once knew. The woman looked at her, her eyes gentle but filled with wisdom. She nodded slightly, as if understanding Sarah's confusion, but didn't rush to explain everything. No, you haven't left this world, she replied calmly. You've simply crossed a threshold, a gateway leading you to another place, a place where souls like yours will learn and grow. Her voice was soothing, yet filled with strength. And from here, you will begin the journey of discovering the truth about the soul, the lessons each of us must learn in order to become higher beings, brighter souls. Sarah felt as though she was walking through a hazy, strange dream. Though she couldn't fully grasp what was happening around her, she felt an undeniable pull to follow the woman, a powerful sense as if she were being guided to a place she could not refuse. The woman led her through a shimmering door, and immediately, Sarah felt a cold breeze envelop her. She stepped into a quiet forest, where the air grew thick and heavy with stillness. The towering ancient trees stood in silence, as if they had been there for centuries, their gnarled branches stretching high into a sky that seemed timeless. The light in the forest was not like ordinary sunlight, but a soft, ethereal glow, gently illuminating the space, yet creating a numbing feeling, as though time itself had ceased to exist. Everything around her felt frozen, as though nothing moved, nothing changed. As Sarah looked around, she saw shadowy figures drifting aimlessly through the woods, faint, translucent souls without clear forms. They resembled lost ghosts, wandering with no purpose, no destination. They brushed past one another without speaking, without acknowledging each other, their eyes heavy with sorrow and emptiness. A sense of heaviness settled on Sarah as she realized these souls had not been freed. They were trapped in their emotions, their regrets, things that could not be erased in their hearts. Unhealed wounds, uncorrected mistakes, and unforgotten pain lingered within them. Sarah felt as though she could almost hear their silent whispers, heavy sighs of despair, emotions of guilt and regret filling the air. These souls were like drifting shadows, endlessly searching for a release, but unable to find the path to peace. As Sarah moved deeper into the forest, her gaze was drawn to one soul in particular, a man standing motionless in the middle of the ancient trees. His eyes were filled with sorrow, dark and endless, and his movements were repetitive, as though he were trapped in a loop of past actions. He bent down, attempting to pick up a bag from the ground, but each time he did, the bag slipped through his fingers and fell again. He didn't speak, nor did he seem to notice Sarah's presence. He simply repeated the same motion over and over again, a futile cycle. There was a deep sadness in his eyes, and an air of hopelessness seemed to surround him. Sarah couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of compassion and sorrow as she watched him. It was as if his pain was so intense that it reached deep into her own soul. Unable to bear it any longer, she turned to the woman beside her, her voice filled with concern. Why is he like this? Why can't he move on from what he's doing? The woman gazed at the man with a deep, knowing look, her voice calm but filled with understanding. Souls like his cannot move forward, Sarah. They are trapped in their mistakes, unable to forgive themselves. The actions they took in the past, the wrong decisions they can't change, they are all bound by them. These souls are bound by guilt, regret, and the weight of what they have done. Each repetitive action is an attempt to fix what cannot be fixed, a reminder of the mistakes they cannot let go of. Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for the suffering these souls endured. She asked, her voice full of curiosity yet tinged with worry, so, how do they move on? How can they escape this cycle? The woman smiled softly, her eyes filled with compassion and wisdom. Only when they face their past, accept their mistakes, and learn to forgive themselves can they evolve. Forgiveness is not just an action, it is a long process, a journey to release the negative emotions that bind them. When they learn to forgive, they will free themselves and find the peace they've been searching for. Sarah continued her journey deeper into the mysterious forest, each step she took seeming heavier than the last. She felt a deep sense of sorrow growing inside her as she passed by more souls, each one caught in its own unique suffering. They weren't bad souls. Sarah began to understand that. They weren't trapped because they had done terrible things, they were stuck because they couldn't forgive themselves or love themselves enough to let go of the pain that held them captive. She stopped beside one soul, a young woman with long, flowing hair and eyes clouded with sadness. The woman stood motionless, staring into an empty space, as if searching for something that she could never reach. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, unable to hold back her curiosity as she stepped closer. The soul didn't respond immediately, but after a long pause, she shook her head as if she couldn't understand the question. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to go back and fix all the mistakes I made. But I can't. I can't change anything." Sarah listened closely, her heart aching. She realized that it wasn't just the evil actions of the past that kept these souls trapped, it was the weight of their own unresolved pain and regret. These souls were tangled in the consequences of their past mistakes, but they couldn't change what had already been done. They couldn't find forgiveness, not from others, but most painfully, not even from themselves. She turned to the woman beside her, and the woman, sensing her thoughts, spoke softly. "These souls are not trapped because they were evil, Sarah. They're not here because they've committed unforgivable sins. They're trapped because they can't forgive themselves. They carry wounds, deep and unhealable, that prevent them from moving on. The mistakes they made are choices they can't take back. And in their hearts, regret and sorrow linger, stopping them from moving forward." Sarah felt a wave of compassion wash over her as she looked at the souls around her. She realized that these beings weren't evil or cruel, they were simply souls who had not yet learned how to free themselves from their own emotional burdens. But how would they ever escape if they couldn't forgive? Sarah continued her journey through the forest, each step reverberating in the stillness around her. Every soul she encountered seemed to have its own story, its own unique sorrow. She couldn't help but feel the weight of their pain as she gazed at them. Suddenly, a faint light led her to a quiet, isolated spot where a female soul sat alone, her face empty, her eyes devoid of any emotion. She sat there, completely detached from the world around her, staring blankly ahead, as if she had lost all sense of feeling. Sarah gently approached, her heart filled with both curiosity and compassion. She softly asked, "What's wrong? Why are you here, in this place?" The female soul didn't respond immediately. She sighed deeply, her breath carrying a profound sadness. After a moment of silence, she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, as if these words were coming from a place deep inside her heart. "I betrayed the one I loved most. I hurt him in ways that can never be fixed. I made him suffer, drove him away from me. I don't deserve to be forgiven." Sarah stood still, her heart tightening with each word. She couldn't help but feel the deep anguish in the soul's voice. The pain she carried wasn't just the loss of her love but the guilt that consumed her, a guilt that seemed impossible to escape. Sarah slowly sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering a silent gesture of comfort. "You must forgive yourself," Sarah said softly but firmly. "You cannot live with this regret. It's the only way to free yourself from the suffering. If you don't, you'll remain trapped in this pain forever." The female soul lifted her gaze, her eyes filled with torment as though she wanted to say something, but no words came. Sarah knew that not everyone could easily forgive themselves, especially when the pain they had caused was so immense. But she also understood that there was no way to move forward without facing one's own mistakes and learning to release the guilt. Sarah stood there, deeply moved by the woman's words. What she had just experienced had completely changed her perspective on life. She thought of the souls she had encountered, each of them carrying deep sorrow and regret. They weren't bad people, they were simply souls stuck in the past, unable to move forward because they hadn't learned to forgive themselves or others. It was the same with her. She realized that she too had carried past mistakes, unresolved emotions, and relationships that had never been healed. She turned back to the woman, her eyes filled with emotion, and felt a wave of awakening sweeping over her. "So, if I can forgive myself, I can be free?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with the realization. The woman smiled softly, her expression full of understanding. Yes, my dear. Love is the key to unlocking the door to freedom. Only when you love yourself and forgive your past mistakes can you walk the path to peace and liberation. Sarah felt each of the woman's words penetrate her heart like a ray of light piercing the darkness within. She began to understand that life wasn't just about what she had gone through, it was about what she could do to change, to heal, to love herself and others. The fears and worries she had carried for so long were beginning to dissolve, making way for an infinite peace she had never known. When Sarah felt the profound change within her soul, she knew that it was time to return to the physical world, where everything she had experienced was like a door opening to previously undiscovered truths. The sense of peace and tranquility she felt throughout her spiritual journey washed over her like a gentle wave, soothing the worries and fears she had carried for so many years. She no longer felt tense or afraid of departure or loss. Everything became clear. She felt as though she had been reborn, carrying a new clarity, and understanding that life is not just a series of fleeting moments, but a long journey to seek understanding and love. But then, in that moment, a soft light enveloped her, and when she opened her eyes, Sarah realized she had returned. She was no longer in the misty, mystical space but in a cold hospital room. The sounds of machines beeping, the hustle of doctors around her reminded her that she was still alive. The doctors were working frantically to stabilize her, but the strange thing was, she no longer felt pain or panic. Her body no longer had the injuries or paralysis she had expected to endure forever. Instead, she felt an absolute sense of peace, as though all the pain had completely vanished. She felt light, almost as if she were floating in the air, a sense of happiness that she had never felt in her earthly life. Lying there, watching the doctors rush around her, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for life. She decided she would not live the same way anymore. She no longer cared about material things or trivial concerns, but instead focused on living with love, forgiveness, and understanding. She realized that each life has its own unique journey, and it is those very mistakes and challenges we face that serve as crucial lessons to help our souls grow and evolve. She remembered the souls she had encountered in the mystical world, those who had become trapped because they couldn't forgive themselves. She now understood that learning to forgive, to love, and to understand was the key to finding true freedom. And now, she told herself, she would not fall into the trap of regret or remorse anymore. She would live fully, with everything she had, and treasure each moment as a precious gift. Sarah Williams' story is not merely a journey between life and passing but a profound awakening, opening her eyes to a completely new perspective on life, forgiveness, and love. Through her near-death experience, Sarah not only faced her passing but also found a deep understanding of the true nature of the soul and the path it must take to achieve salvation. She discovered that in the darkest and most challenging moments, love and forgiveness are invisible forces that can heal deep wounds in the soul, allowing it to find peace and freedom. Sarah learned that not all souls can move toward the light if they don't learn to forgive themselves and love themselves. She realized that every decision, emotion, and action a person experiences impacts the soul's evolution. Through the souls she encountered, Sarah understood that being trapped in the past and the regrets we carry can only be freed when we face our mistakes and learn to forgive the wounds we've caused. This is not just a lesson about passing, but a lesson about living, growing, and overcoming oneself. Sarah's story is not just her own, it carries a message for all of us that life is not just about what we experience, but the valuable lessons we learn from the soul's journey of evolution. The challenges, the stumbles in life are not meaningless, they are opportunities for the soul to learn, to grow, and ultimately to find peace. We don't live just to exist, we live to learn, to love, to forgive, and to reach the liberation from the burdens in our souls. Thank you so much for watching today's video. We hope this incredible near-death experience has provided you with new insights into the mysteries of the afterlife and the life of souls beyond our world. If you found this story intriguing, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Your support means a lot to us. Stay curious, and we look forward to bringing you more amazing stories soon.